Hello dear students, so now today we would move ahead in this 7th chapter of class 6 science, that is getting to know plants. There we were discussing about the parts of plant. Now if you see, there are two parts of the plant, vegetative part and the reproductive part. Now this vegetative part comprises of three things here: root, stem and the leaf. So root, stem and leaf constitute the vegetative part of the plant. We have already discussed about all these three vegetative parts in the previous lectures. Now today we would move towards the reproductive part of the plant. Now if you see, the reproductive part also contains three things: flower, which later turns into the fruits, and ultimately we have the seeds also inside. So these three constitute the reproductive part of the plant. Now here today we would try to understand the structure of the flower. Okay, so at first we would try to understand the structure of the flower. So let's see the structure of the flower here. So let's see the structure of the flower here, that is parts of the flower. Now if you see, in a flower you have the bright red colored fragments like this big one. Okay, so these are known as the petals, we call them the petal. And we have another name for the petal, that is corolla, we also call them as corolla. So these are the petals here, these bright red part. So this bright red part which you can see, this is these red part, we are just calling them as the petals. And we have another name for the petal, that is corolla. Okay, now down to these petals you can see a green structure, this one. Okay, this one is the green structure here, which hold all these petals together. Okay, so this green structure is known as the sepal. Okay, and we have another name for the sepals as calyx. Okay, so we also call them as the calyx. So these calyx or these sepals hold all these petals, means all these bright red colored fragments together. Okay, now if you see, there are two main parts of the flower here. Okay, one is the male reproductive part, another is the female reproductive part. Okay, the flower also constitute two reproductive part, male reproductive part and the female reproductive part. Okay, now if you see, the male reproductive part comprises of two things: one is anther, one is the filament. What is anther? Anther means the small yellow ball like structure which you can see here. So these small yellow ball like structure are known as the anther. And down to these anther you have you have the long hair, the green colored hair down to these anther. So these green colored hair are known as the filament. So these two constitute the male reproductive part, and together they are known as the stamen. We also call them as the stamens here. Are you getting this? We also call them as the stamen. Okay, so stamen is the male reproductive part. So stamen comprises of three things: anther and the filament. So these two constitute the male reproductive part of the flower. Okay, now if you see the centered part here, this is the centered part. We can divide the centered part into three segments. The uppermost one is known as the stigma, the top one, this one part is known as the stigma. And the the mid one part is known as the style. And this ends down there here. So this one part is known as the female reproductive part. This is the female reproductive part of the flower, which is also known as the ovary. This is also known as the ovary. So ovary is the female reproductive part of the flower here. Now inside of this ovary you can see small white like structure here, which are known as the ovaries. We call them as the ovaries. These ovaries ultimately turns into the seeds. Okay, getting this or not? So these ovaries ultimately turns into the seeds. So this is all about the structure of the flower here. So you have to make this structure in your notebook there. Are you getting it or not? So this is all about the structure of the flower. So here we have the parts of flower. So first one, we have already discussed the petals, also known as corolla. So this is the brightest and most beautiful part of the flower, which you have just already seen this. Okay, red colored part. Then we have the sepals. So this is the green colored structure down to these all petals, which hold these all petals together. So we call this green colored structure as the sepals. Another name for the sepal is the calyx. Okay. Then we have the stamen. Stamen, this is the male reproductive part of the flower. So this include the anther and the filament. Anther we have already seen, this small yellow dot like structure, ball like structure, and down to this we have the long hair like this green color. So this one are known as the anther, and this hair like structure are known as the filaments. So these two constitute the stamen. These two constitute the stamen, and stamen is the male reproductive part of the flower. Okay, then the mid section of the flower, the mid section, we have the mid section of the flower here. So this one mid section of the flower can be divided into two sub parts. The top one is known as the stigma, and this one middle part is known as the style. Okay, now then down to this we have another part here where this style ends. So this one part is known as the ovary. Okay, so let's discuss about the ovary. First you note it down. And this is the last part of the flower, that is ovary. So ovary, this is also known as the female reproductive part. Okay, so where the style ends, this is the style, this was the style, and here we have the petals. Okay, so here we have the ovary there. Okay, so this is the ovary, this is known as the female reproductive part of the flower. So it contains some ovules, this small here, small white structure here. So these are known as the ovules, and these ovules finally turn into the seeds. Okay, so this is all about the parts of flower. Would discuss more about the flower in the lecture set. Till then, stay tuned and keep watching. Thank you. Have a good day. But before this, let me tell you the structure which I have just shown to you, means the structure of the flower that you have to make in your notebook. Okay then, see you in the next lecture.